We got multiple free agency updates for the Toronto Blue Jays, and it's not just Soto now. It's a bunch of guys that the Jays are linked to, and so much news is coming out that we're going to try our best to sift through all of it and take a look at what's most realistic for the Toronto Blue Jays. But it's starting to heat up. It's getting crazy. So I'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. Welcome in, everybody, to Jays Digest. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And Nick, it just gets crazier and crazier every single day, whether it's Jeff Passan reporting, whether it's Canada's favorite human being, John Heyman, coming out with the reports, whoever it may be. There's a lot of news to dissect. There's a lot of news to get into. But before we do any of that, I want to let you know that a large percentage of you watching these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So go ahead and hit that sub button. Nick and I are very close to our goal of 15,000 subscribers. And it'd mean the world to us if you could help get us there. But Nick, things are starting to heat up here. New information coming out every single day, whether it's Blue Jays insiders, whether it's Major League Baseball insiders. A lot of stuff going on, a lot to break down today. Let's get straight into it.
Yeah, a lot to go over. And Ben Nicholson-Smith came out with an article yesterday, basically, or a couple days ago, highlighting, kind of went over a ton of things here. And we're going to start with the big news here. So obviously the Jays are in on Juan Soto. We know that he's met with the Mets, he's met with the Red Sox, he's met with the Blue Jays, and he's meeting with the Yankees tomorrow. So I suspect this is going to be a big week, at least in the rumor mill for the Jays. So we'll keep you up to date with that. But basically, it was like a round table, and he was answering questions that a lot of fans out there asked. How in are they on Soto and Max Fried if there's also talk of a $25 to $30 million budget? He said this one's likeliest to simplest to explain. Last offseason, ownership at Rogers Communications Incorporated, which also owns Sportsnet, approved an offer of approximately $700 million for Shohei Ohtani, but that was considered a special circumstance. The money for Ohtani was there, but wasn't available to redistribute elsewhere. 1 year later, the same thinking applies to Soto, who's even younger. And while the Yankees and Mets are seen by industry observers as the most likely landing spots for Soto, the Jays will at least try, and an idea would be to recruit Bautista, Encarnacion, and Vladdy to help make the pitch. There's actually a few things to dive into here. We have a lot more to go over, but Peter, on the starting with the Soto front, well, for one, Ben Nicholson-Smith, I think this is the first time we've gotten it officially confirmed that the Jays were going to offer him $700 million. We knew it was $600. I never heard. We didn't know for sure if it was $700, but last season they did offer Shohei, $700 million. And it's basically, as we discussed and as Shadavidi discussed, an alternative budget. They have the budget for normal players like Max Fried, like Alex Bregman, but they have an alternative budget for Juan Soto here, and it seems like they're willing to offer him, according to Ben Nicholson-Smith, upwards of $700 million and a very similar budget to what they offered Ohtani last year. And this is a little bit encouraging, actually. And again, this is from Ben Nicholson-Smith. And if there's one person who doesn't, lie, I should say, he's very conservative with his reporting. He obviously works with Sportsnet, so he's a lot more conservative than some of the other guys out there. They have a lot of money, so I don't think they're going to get, might get outbid by Steve Cohen, but I don't think money is going to be the biggest deterrent here.
That to me, Nick, is shocking. I don't know what your overall thoughts are on that, but
Yeah.
you said you're encouraged. My word would be surprised because I get shelling out $700 million for Shohei Ohtani because you take a look at the off-field impact that he has. We've mentioned it several times. And look at the money that he generated for the Dodgers just this season alone, over 120 million US dollars. So that in itself is going to pay off the contract of Shohei in his tenure with the Dodgers. And yeah, sure, you might be a little bit handcuffed after the fact because of all the deferred money, but while he's playing and while he's suiting up for your team, all of Japan is watching, all of Major League Baseball is watching, and you got graphics letting you know that he's coming up in 7 batters in the playoffs. So that's the kind of impact and marketability that Shohei Ohtani has. I don't see that same impact off the field for Juan Soto. Don't get me wrong, I love the player. And him being 26 years old and already having so much success at the major league level, I think he's earned his money here and he's going to get it. But Rogers, a telecommunications company, a team that is always looking to solidify its brand off the field, I find it really surprising that they're going to be willing to go that far and for that amount of money with Juan Soto. I did not think that they were going to go in that direction. And the fact that we're hearing it from a Sportsnet employee himself, I not only think this is encouraging, I am absolutely floored by this news. And this is massive. Like, if you didn't believe that the Blue Jays had a chance at Juan Soto a couple of days ago, this news coming out right here that Rogers is going to be willing to go to crazy lengths to acquire this guy, I think that should tell you that there are a lot more in than maybe even you and I suspected at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, and again, you can see here and clarify again. It says an offer approximately 700 million for Shohei Ohtani, but that was considered a special circumstance. The first sentence in the next paragraph. 1 year later, the same thinking applies to Soto, and I think the biggest reason for this is, I mean, of course, they need to put on a competitive team, but Peter, I mean, they just did a ton of renovations at Rogers Center. They had a ton of
Right.
renovations there. If they can't get fans in the stadium this year, the renovations not going to go to waste necessarily, but they need to get money in there now. And this is the way to do it. This is probably also Ross and Mark Shapiro's last chance to do so. So a huge update on that front. And again, they've already met with him. And I don't think they would have met with him this early if they weren't prepared to spend the money, because they know they're not oblivious to how much Steve Cohen is going to be giving Juan Soto. So I think at this point it's more than due diligence, and I don't think they're going to be outbid. I mean, maybe if Steve Cohen goes up to something ridiculous like $800 million, and then we'll have a
Yeah.
different conversation. But I don't think that the Jays are going to get outbid. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it's massive news and something that's kind of flown under the radar for a lot of Jays fans, because it was kind of, within an article here. But it's also interesting because not that it really matters. We now know they offered Shohei 700 million, so they gave him the exact same offer that the Los Angeles Dodgers gave him. He also ultimately picked the Dodgers. But for anyone out there who thought the Jays weren't willing to go up to the 700 million deferred money that the Dodgers did, they absolutely were, and they gave the exact same offer that the Dodgers gave, which is a bit ridiculous because they are trying to spend big. And the more I think about it now, the more it almost makes sense. If they're going to go in and spend $700 million on a player, Ohtani would have been the better player, but I mean,
Yeah.
they need to do it now with these new renovations. All the money they've poured in, putting a competitive, player on the field. They'll get their money back, surely, with Juan Soto just by having a better team. But it's huge news. And any quick final thoughts before we dive into some more stuff, because there's a lot more
Yeah.
there. But yeah, definitely the biggest news, at least regarding the Blue Jays mindset heading in. And if you're worried about the price, I don't think the Blue Jays are.
The one little tidbit there that I found interesting in that article is the fact that those funds were not to be redistributed elsewhere.
Yep.
So you have that $700 million to spend. I'm wondering now, let's say you hypothetically get Juan Soto. Are you going to be able to spend more? Are you going to be able to get, let's say, a Max Fried, who's going to cost you in the ballpark of
25. Yeah.
150 to 200 million total? Are you going to be able to go over $1 billion USD to spend this offseason if you have to go 650 to 750 for Juan Soto? Because with Shohei, with the addition of Shohei and the fact that he can pitch and cover multiple holes on your roster, I think the Blue Jays would have been a World Series caliber team with Shohei and a couple of minor additions. And some people might disagree with me, but I think with a healthy Vladdy, with a healthy Bo and Shohei, I think that's a World Series caliber team. I don't know if you could stop me right here, Nick, if you disagree with me, but Juan Soto, I don't know if he moves the needle as much as Shohei does. So you're going to have to add more, in my opinion. If you get Juan Soto, it can't stop there. Maybe you don't have to get a pitcher as elite as Max Fried, or you don't have to spend another $300 million on a specific free agent, but you're going to have to fill some other holes on your roster. I don't think Juan Soto solves all of the Blue Jays' problems. He definitely makes them a playoff team if he comes aboard. But I think we can both agree, Nick, that there are some holes in the bullpen. There are some holes in the starting rotation. There's a lack of depth in that area as well. And the Blue Jays are going to have a lot of work to do this offseason. I don't think it could just stop at Juan Soto. As much as I'd like for that to be the case, there's some more patchwork that needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, if they get Juan Soto, I have a feeling they're going to go all in on some other guys as well. But I don't know. Seems like it's going to be a huge, huge offseason, whether or not they get Juan Soto. A couple other things here before we wrap up. Why are the Blue Jays being described as aggressive if GM Ross Atkins is talking about patience? And at the GM meetings, it became clear that the Jays were motivated in the starting pitching market, showing early interest in the likes of Fried, Luis Severino, Yusei Kikuchi. Here's my rate on how it ends up. Even if you're willing to be patient in the hopes that a better deal emerges later in the offseason, it's a bad look to call a player up for the first time on January 15th. Better to start conversations now. Do they want a specific role? All of these different things. And at this point, it started information gathering, and there were some other things there, of course, about their bullpen help, which we'll have a full video on, but basically saying that they're really considering non-tendering some of their relievers, whether that's Jordan Romano or some of the other guys. So it's going to be interesting to see how that holds up. But I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, they're showing interest in the starting pitching market, and if they strike out on Juan Soto, I think they have contingency plans. I truly believe that contingency plan is Alex Bregman. That's kind of what my initial feeling is. But I think either way, especially given now last season was terrible, but I think last season's disappointment is setting up for a huge offseason for the Toronto Blue Jays. Now maybe that's just wishful thinking. I
Yeah.
know a lot of people don't trust Ross Atkins, but I mean, I think if last season would have went similar to the other years where you get eliminated in the first round, they wouldn't be as inclined to make a big move. But if they don't make massive moves here, the team is bad as it is. Yeah, you can consider adding Bichette, 4 more wins. You maybe get back to 500. I think they're striving huge for this. And quite frankly, I think they're going to go all in on Juan Soto. I don't know if they're going to get him. My inclination is probably not. I think the Mets end up with him. But if they strike out on Soto, I think they're going to pivot very, very quickly and try to get some of the bigger names. Whether that it could also be in the form of a trade for something like Nolan
Yeah.
Arenado, something out of the blue. But I'm very optimistic right now. Could be, hopeless optimism, but I don't know. I feel like something big is coming for this team. Just by the way that these reporters are speaking, I feel like they know that something big is coming.
Well, the fact that they're doing this so early and that they started the process early with Soto, that tells me that there is a backup plan because they were playing the Shohei game last offseason. They were at his beck and call. They were trying to do whatever they could to get him, and they thought that they had him. And a lot of us thought that they had him as well if the offer was where it needed to be. So it ultimately didn't end up happening. They put all of their eggs in the Shohei basket to give you a metaphor there, and ultimately just didn't end up happening. And then you're only left with bringing back Kevin Kiermaier, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, Justin Turner. Those are fine players, and those are big leaguers, longtime big leaguers that have played a role for a very long time and have been valuable contributors in the MLB. So I don't have a problem with them, but they can't be your headlining moves. So now the fact that the Blue Jays are getting this out of the way early, they're signifying to Soto that they're extremely interested, that they want him to be the face of the franchise alongside Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I think that is a very good sign. And the fact that they're willing to spend that money as well. I wasn't sure how far they would be willing to go, but I mean, Ben Nicholson Smith is saying it right there. So, yeah, again, I think the fact that they're doing this early is really good and a positive sign. And whether they get him or not, I think they'll be able to pivot just because there's a lot of time left in the offseason. Their backs aren't against the wall necessarily like they were in December of last year when they either got Ohtani or nothing. It was Ohtani or bust, and it was a bust ultimately.
Yeah, and ultimately as well, the free agency class this year is a lot better than it was last year. I mean, last year it was Cody Bellinger, Matt Chapman, and that was about it that you
Yeah.
could have went for. So it's gearing up for a massive offseason, and I think this week we're gonna have some more reports on Juan Soto as he's meeting with the Yankees tomorrow. And we'll keep you up to date with all the latest news. So make sure to hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you guys later.